Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra podcast, featuring your host, Darrell Scott.
Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the official CJO podcast. I'm Darrell Scott. Our guest today is David Banks. The only thing I will say is this man spent 20 years in Las Vegas, and he came back to Cleveland. We will talk about that and the other side of stuff that he has done. David, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Not a problem, sir. Let's talk about this. So when did you start playing? You're a trumpet player, correct?
Trumpet player, that's right.
When did you start playing the trumpet?
Well, that would have been about 60 years ago. And I went up to a family reunion up in Randolph, New York, and one of my second cousins pulled out a trumpet and taught me a scale. And after that, I was hooked.
Wait a minute. So you were at some family gathering. Had you ever played the trumpet before?
Only, when they would bring those horns into a school and say, here, this is a trumpet, this is a clarinet, and they try to get a sound out of it. And, so I did that once and put it down. And then I had played piano since I was about 5 years old. But I always wanted to be a baseball player, so I didn't really practice piano too much. And but when I got a chance to play that trumpet, I thought that was really something special. So that sort of stuck with me.
Okay, who's your favorite baseball player? Be careful
Oh,
now.
Ray Fosse. I I,
Really?
I wanted to be a catcher. I learned to catch with one hand behind my back like he did. I just thought he was great.
Until he got hit by Pete Rose in the All-Star game.
Exactly.
Man, I remember that like it was yesterday. All right. So you're playing the trumpet. When did you when did you kind of know that that was your instrument? What made you go, I'm not doing anything else. I'm going to play the trumpet.
Well, I was in ninth grade, and I was asked to play a Broadway show of Camelot, which was a local production they were doing during the summer. And the guy sitting next to me actually was getting paid to do that. And I thought, wow, you got paid for doing this? This is great.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, maybe I can turn this into a career or something. So I started, I was taking lessons and stuff from Frank Bradshaw at Akron U. But I started to turn on, more serious efforts, and I joined the Akron Jazz Workshop when I was in 10th grade. Roland Palucci was directing that, and that taught me quite a bit about how to play jazz and big band music and stuff.
Now, in the era that we grew up in, why did you pick jazz?
I was really into all sorts of different things. Of course, and I knew Herb Alpert's work back when I was a kid, and I the funny thing is, I was in sixth grade. I put together a trio.
Did
It
you?
was myself on trumpet, Mark Lopman, who is actually a fantastic musician, and he played saxophone, and I had a drummer. That was it. And we we played out the
Wow.
Herb Alpert songbook. We thought it sounded great, but I appreciated all kinds of different music. I listened to some classical stuff. I listened to some Bix Beiderbecke, Dixieland stuff, and developed an ear for that. And jazz was good. My father was a big band aficionado, and in 10th grade, Maynard Ferguson came to Cuyahoga Falls High School. I had no idea who he was. My dad said, just a minute. He came downstairs with this Charlie Barnett 48 or 78 RPM record of Maynard playing his theme song, and I thought that was incredible. I didn't know that trumpets could do that. So,
Yeah, he is one of my favorite songs is his version of Birdland, which I just go, you can't sit still listening to that song. It is just
right.
tremendous energy. So, at what age did you decide to go to Vegas?
I had just I would finish my first year of I was finishing my first year of grad school at Akron U, and I got a call to perform Wayne Newton's show in Youngstown. And he carried a lead trumpet player by the name of Al Longo, and once Al heard me play at the rehearsal, he said, "Dave, you got to get out of here." He says, "I'll set you up in Atlantic City or Las Vegas. Just name your city, but you really need to play professionally somewhere else." So I picked Vegas, and he set me up with an apartment and put me in contact with a couple people out there. And I moved out there in the summer of 1980, right after the Akron U Jazz Ensemble got back from their Montreux trip.
And that would be Montreux, Switzerland.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so you're 20 years old. You're traveling to Montreux, Switzerland. You get set up with a place in Vegas. How is the 20-year-old self, you, dealing with all of this?
It was interesting because I only knew maybe one person in Las Vegas when I got there. I was real green, uh, didn't know the lay of the land. Uh, but it was an interesting time. Those times there was a lot of work, and there's some fantastic musicians in Las Vegas at that time that played, and they had the musicians union had its own nightclub in the back end of the business building, and they had big bands going there 6 nights a week, from 9 o'clock in the evening to 5 in the morning.
Wow.
And the early bands would be the guys that are just coming in or maybe retired, and then the late bands would be all the heavy players, Carl Fontana, Carl Saunders, those kind of guys would be playing in the late bands because it'd be after their shows that they would come in, and you would learn a lot, and then every once in a while get a chance to play with them, and I sort of developed a good reputation, and I got one of my cards, and this was my naive attitude. I handed it to one guy, Henry Rose, who was a bit of a booking agent there, and he said, "I don't want your card." And I
Wow.
looked, I looked at him, well, why not? And he says, "Well, if I can't remember you by how you play, I don't need to know who you are."
Wow. Wow. However,
So I
great
said,
point.
"Okay."
Great point.
And then I went over. A friend of mine, Lynn Nicholson, was playing with the relief band at the Stardust Hotel, and his trumpet section included Johnny Madrid, who was another high note player, and they were about an hour into this show. Those production shows would be virtually 2 hours straight, not nonstop, and Lynn took this one lick from Earth, Wind, and Fire up an octave, and Johnny took the rest of the phrase up 2 octaves. And I'm looking at these guys thinking, does everybody in town do this? Because I gotta really start getting it together. So we played a production show the next night, and you got paid an overage because you were basically sight reading the shows each day. So it was a very interesting job to do.
So how long before you were not in a relief band and you were just kind of just part of a band and just, doing what you're
It was
doing?
about 3 years. I ended up working. I got a call to work with Jimmy Mullitor, who used to live in Youngstown, and was his family was friends with some of those mobsters out there. So it was a very interesting relationship. But Jimmy was a fantastic reed player, and he had the bands at the Hilton and the Flamingo Hilton. So I was asked to join those bands, and I stayed there for about 6.5, 7 years until we had a big musician strike over the recorded music taking over our jobs.
I think I remember stuff about that. Um, so you're still young. You're still 20 years old, 25. How are you just dealing with the lifestyle of Las Vegas?
Well, it was different.
Yeah.
There's the story. I don't know if I could tell some of those on the air, but the uh, the first day I was in town, I was stopped at a red light, and some girl walks up to the window, and I said, "No,
Uh,
thanks." But you just have to put your blinders on. And actually, once you get off of the strip, it's Vegas is a lot like a normal town.
right. Yeah.
It just with a lot of the billboards and that sort of thing, you're always reminded of why you're there. But they actually have per capita more churches in Vegas than any other city in the country.
Half of
To
that per capita is getting married at those churches for a little quick minute.
That's right.
I just can't imagine. I've been to Vegas maybe 4 times. Number one, it's too many people for me. It just is. If you're just walking down the street, walking down the strip, you can't help but bump into somebody all the time.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and then you never know who's out there. We went to see a show, and next thing you know, at the end of the show, somehow a friend of our group goes backstage, and the guy in the band goes, "Darrell, how you doing?" And I kind of look at him like I have no clue who you are. And it turned out he'd been in Cleveland and we had crossed paths and things like that. You all of a sudden want to do this big band thing. So how did you go from, let's say, being in the band to running the band?
Well, I always wanted to do something like that. in the back of my head. As a matter of fact, the very last year I was in Vegas, I started a rehearsal band out there just to see, and then when I moved back, the way that went down, it was year it was 1999, and believe it or not, romance was involved. And I went to my 25th high school reunion back at Cuyahoga Falls High School, and I met a gal I hadn't seen since graduation day.
Hmm.
And so we hit it off, and long story short, I got back. I sent her a dozen roses, and she called me to thank me a couple days later. And then I invited her out here on Labor Day, proposed to her on the same day, moved her out in January of that year, 2000. I got a call from the principal of Walsh Jesuit High School in May, and I'm sitting in a parking lot, and he's sort of laughing over the phone. He says, "Dave, you wouldn't be interested in coming back to Ohio and teaching music and drama at Walsh Jesuit High School, would you?"
Nice.
And I had also got a call from Jack Shantz, and
Mm.
Jack said, we really need a lead trumpet player back here in Cleveland. If you would consider coming back. And I said, Jack, I can't just come back. I need to come back to something. So it was always
Right.
in my mind. So the two things put together, and I came back and I told my wife, I said, "Hey, look, if you want to be close to our folks, here's the ticket back." And she started crying, and so I knew I had to sell two houses real fast and buy one out in Ohio and move.
Uh,
So I get back to Ohio, and one of the things I wanted to do is, I started working with the CJO, and I also thought, well, I want to have sort of a different angle, a different voice.
hmm
So I thought, I'm going to put together something that has really inspiring music, but at the same time can connect to the audience. You're not playing over their head, you're not playing under their heads, but you're doing stuff that they might recognize, they might appreciate, and that you can tell stories with. So that was sort of the impetus for me starting the Dave Banks Big Band.
So I'm a novice. I listen to music. I can't pick it apart or anything like that. What is the difference between being a member of the band versus it's your band and you're calling the shots? What is the difference according to your opinion?
A lot of prep time. Um, you're dealing with trying to figure out who's going to be in the band, what kind of music you're going to play, how to get work, how to effectively keep the work coming, and keep the band members engaged while keeping the direction of the band going the right way. So it's a lot of off-stage work to make sure that sort of thing happens. It's enjoyable, but a lot of work.
Do you interpret the songs by, and I guess what I mean by that is, do you take, and we'll use Birdland as an example. You have Birdland, you know what the original, well, you know what Maynard Ferguson's version is like. I was going to say it's his original, but no, it's not. Do you then take it and interpret it and arrange it into your style, whether it's you, the individual, or you, the big band leader?
We'll do a little bit of both. Like sometimes we'll do shows based upon a particular artist. And so if we do a Maynard Ferguson show, we'll do a lot of his charts. But we might do a different theme. And we've got several guys that arrange in the band. And so they have started to arrange a particular song, which you might recognize the song, but they'll do it in such a way that'll utilize some of the talents that we have in our particular band. So, like we might do one song, but it might be popular as a jazz song. Maybe we do it as a bossa nova as opposed to a swing song.
Mm.
So you might change up the style, you might change up the presentation or the feature on that. And so we do a lot of different types of themes. Like we'll do a James Bond theme. So we'll take a bunch of the music from the movie, and I'll look around and see who's done different arrangements on it, or we might do our own arrangements of those kind of things.
If I wanted to be in the band, do I audition with you? Do I send you a tape? Do you come watch me play? How do I become a member of your big band?
It's interesting because I'm about relationships first, and making sure that the band sounds good, but at the same time that we all get along and we're not at each other's throat. There's no hidden agendas. So a lot of it is personal, and the way that you find people that you can work with. I might hear somebody playing with another band, and if there's an opening, we don't have a lot of openings. A lot of these guys have been with us for a long time. Like my guitarist, I've known him since 10th grade.
Hmm, hmm.
And he actually moved out to Vegas to play my wedding with my first wife out there, and then he stayed, moved on to Los Angeles, and then he also moved back to Ohio. So when he moved back, I said, "Hey, why don't you play with our band?" And of course, here he is. But it's a lot of his word of mouth, and who's playing where, and does that person sort of fit with the way the band is.
How many people in the band? Let me ask that first. How many
We've got
people?
it's a 17 piece band, including me. Sometimes I'll add a percussionist, and then I've got a stable of vocalists, depending on what kind of show we're doing.
So you have to deal, and we'll deal with that number 17. You have to deal with 17 different personalities
Right.
individually, yet all at the same time.
Right, exactly. And then sometimes the budget will be such where we have to use 12 pieces instead. If it goes below that, I just usually will pass it off to somebody else, so if they only want a trio or a quartet, I'll usually say, well, let's do this, but if it's I'll try and just book the big band as much as I can.
What is your criteria for a novice like me to get into your band? What are you looking for out of me? And say I'm a trumpet player.
Well, I'm looking for an ability to play all the different styles, not just jazz, but you can play rock, you can play funk, you can play R&B, you can do all sorts of things. Usually if you can solo some, that's helpful. Playing in tune, of course, and being on time. That's a big thing.
That would never be a problem with me. I always try to get there this way I can get the nerves calmed down and I don't have to worry about, say, freaking out once I begin to play. Has there ever been an occasion where you're standing in front of the band, leading the band, and there's basically how do you deal with a bad note? Or if you hear something that's a little off, how do you recover?
Well, I mean, we usually take care of that in rehearsal most of the time. If there's a time in a performance, then the guys in the band are pretty good at taking a cue. So I'll be really careful about making sure I conduct really well, and stay out of the way when I don't need to, but making sure that we can navigate through a different section. Sometimes the music itself will have rehearsal letters and things like that where we can jump back on ship if somebody gets off. But that rarely happens because we try and get that dealt with in a rehearsal situation ahead of time.
So realizing that you are out there and you've got this group going on and everything, how can we follow you? Are you, do you have a social media presence? Is there a website? How can we follow what you and your bands are doing?
Yes, we have a website, davebanksbigband.com, and then I'm also on Facebook. I'm not much of a Twitter guy. I do have an account, and occasionally we'll do some advertising on Twitter or what is it, X now, I guess.
Yes.
And then Instagram a little bit, but we have a Facebook page, and we've got our website, so that people can find us that way.
Okay. Good. I appreciate that. This way people can follow you and understand what you're doing. Do you have anything else going on? You got any projects upcoming? Are you gonna
You know, I,
here's my question to all the local musicians. You got any records coming out? You got music coming out where I can go pick it up in the store or something like that, or now go online and download it?
That's an interesting thing. We've really wanted to get into the studio with this particular band, and it just hasn't worked out time-wise. And of course, you need a sponsor or you need some funds to do that. So the band doesn't really have a big footing from a recording aspect.
Hmm.
So that'll be one of the things we will try to address in the next year or two.
That'd be interesting. Well, when you do that, please let us know so we can all go out and purchase the product, and whether or not uh, you become an independent artist or whether or not you get the backing of a larger company. I think we would all look forward to that. Dave, appreciate the time. It's always interesting to learn the different aspects of what musicians do. It's also good to know. Of late, I've talked to a whole bunch of, they always have a side hustle. They always have something going on. That's the other thing. How do you manage big band over here, and if you've got any kind of solo career or maybe trio, how do you manage that? And I can't imagine what your calendar looks like
Yeah,
to keep abreast of what's going on.
the calendar gets a little crazy at times. I'm in demand as a lead trumpet player. Various things. I work with the Temptations. I work with Sal Valentinetti from the America's Got Talent, and they'll ask me to go various places. Like I'll be up with the Temptations up in Niagara Falls on the 14th. I have to be very careful. I try to prioritize. Not only my band but the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra as far as when and where. So those get locked into my schedule as soon as possible, and then I will fill that out as things go. But it gets a little crazy, especially around holiday times and
Yeah.
summertime. So I have to, and I get called to do Broadway shows a bit. So that the scheduling is a nightmare, and I have a very understanding wife.
Last, good, very good. Last question. How many days out of the year do you think that you work as a musician? Whether it's your band, the big band, traveling with the Temptations or whoever.
It's usually I had to figure that out for tax purposes this past year.
Hmm.
It was like around 220.
Dave, there's only 365 days in a year.
That's true.
I don't know how you do it. I greatly appreciate the time. We'll be in touch later on about some other things that maybe we have going on. I
Great.
appreciate you being on the CJO podcast. Greatly appreciate this.
Well,
And
thank you,
ladies,
Darrell.
not a problem, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, there's more of the CJO podcast, Jazz in the Land, coming up.
Sponsorships not only make our season possible, but provide much needed funding for the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra to provide outreach in the community and perpetuate the love of jazz for generations to come. We are so grateful to our presenting media sponsor, IdeaStream, and Jazz NEO for helping our 40th anniversary season come to life. Contact booking at clevelandjazz.org for more information on sponsorship opportunities.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Jazz in the Land, the original CJO podcast. I'm Darrell Scott. Got a special guest today. As a matter of fact, he is the 2024 Jazz Hero, voted to that position by the Jazz Journalists Association, who also is a trombone player. And if you come to one of the Jazz CJO shows, you perhaps may see him playing. And if you do that and you see him, I recommend that you go up and say hello because he's got lots of stuff to talk about. And ladies and gentlemen, here is Mr. Chris Anderson. So, Chris, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be in the number.
This is going to be some fun. Chris, let's begin at the beginning, which is a unique place to be. Tell us about your journey into this music. How'd you get started, and how's it going?
So the year was. So I'm from Detroit. I was born in Detroit. That was my first 10 or 11 years, and finished growing up in Shaker Heights, so the Cleveland area. And I was always surrounded by music. Like my parents were playing music all the time. My parents are always singing. Mom used to sing to me a lot. My sisters were singing all the time. One of them is still singing like nonstop. My grandparents were always singing. So just kind of surrounded by music and was pretty fascinated by it. I'm a trombonist now, but I actually thought I was going to be a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really choose trombone. The teacher was just kind of going down the line. It was like, all right, you're playing trombone. Went to the next kid. I'm like, I don't even know what a trombone is. What are you talking about? So here we are. Actually, I thought I was going to be a drummer because I made my own drum set when I was a kid. I was probably like 7 or 8. I just took a bunch of old cereal boxes and taped them together.
Nice.
I was just beating on them with pencils,
Right.
different sounds and stuff. But so I got started on trombone in 5th grade in Detroit, and then moved to Shaker Heights after that school system, which is a really good school system, especially for arts,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, at least at
Mm-hmm.
that time. And I was able to do band, choir, orchestra. They had jazz band in middle school, and it was one of those districts that every band met every day.
Right.
So, which is a little less common now in some districts. So I was fortunate, and also had some really good teachers. one of my first teachers was William Fay. He's not, retired from
Hmm.
CIM.
Okay.
And it was kind of interesting. Like he was kind of strict as a teacher. I mean, he's a
Hmm.
super cool dude, but I couldn't even take my horn out of the case until I like answered theory questions. So every
Wow.
time I would show up every week, he would be like, all right, what's the order of sharps? And be like, all right, sing this rhythm or clap this rhythm here. All right, now you can get your horn out. So he was real strict on like making sure that I learned the different aspects of music, especially
Hmm.
music reading. Then I studied with Paul Ferguson, just for a little. I didn't have him that long. It was like a year before I graduated. So he didn't get to show me all of the secrets,
Hmm.
but he showed me some good stuff to kind of get me going. And then from there, I went on to Baldwin Wallace, and again had some incredible teachers. Greg Banizak kind of helped me, who's actually a saxophone teacher. He showed me how to unlock the blues.
Hmm.
He's a saxophone, jazz saxophone, but he was very well trained in classical saxophone also. Did
Hmm.
a lot of touring with that. So that was kind of the start. And I remember Greg bringing in all of these local legends.
Hmm.
So he brought in Greg Bandy as a guest, and that just opened up a whole nother world.
Right. Yes.
Kenny Davis, he had him come in as a guest. So as soon as I got exposed to that, then I started going to like the bop stop to sit
Hmm.
in, going to Sixth Street to hear Dave Thomas, or
Hmm.
the boarding house, like listening to those cats. And they were nice. They were like, "Oh, this
Yes.
young blood is coming up here, showing some love." And they would let me sit in with them. So, like Neil Creaky and all of these cats, I would just go
Right.
up there and I'm stepping all over the music. But they but they saw the passion,
Right.
and they could tell that I was like really into it. So they would encourage me and be like, "Yeah, next week, learn a couple tunes, and then, tighten up on a couple tunes. We'll do them again next week."
What was what were you learning? That's some heavy pressure. Um, because I know most of those names and knew that they were well respected in the community. And you, as a high school, early college student, are playing with these, what do you want to call them? These OGs.
Right.
Scared, nervous, or just doing your thing?
There's definitely some nerves there, but I wouldn't have been able to do it if they weren't encouraging me.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I could only say that they saw that I was taking it seriously. So
Hmm.
they decided to afford me that opportunity.
Now, Cleveland has a music history. It's can be distorted on certain occasions. But why did you persist with the jazz?
So that's an interesting question, because I wasn't really a jazz fan
All right.
growing up. I listened to, my parents had gospel music going. They had some 8 tracks of Willie Nelson and
Oh my God, you said 8 tracks.
some
Oh my
James
God.
Brown LPs, and, classic, like some Tchaikovsky,
Right,
some
right.
Mozart that they had. Like these were the records. They had all kinds of
Hmm.
different records and stuff. I didn't really spend a lot of time listening to jazz. I was listening to other things. And then obviously rap was big in the
Yeah,
late 70s,
right.
early 80s. So, I was checking that out. And it wasn't until, I want to say this was like 1990. It's like 89 or 90. My band director, who was a drummer, gave me a J.J. Johnson CD.
Hmm.
And he wasn't, he didn't really know much about J.J. Johnson, but he knew that
Right.
that was the cat that I needed to check out. He was like, "Man,
Hmm.
check out this CD I got a gift for you." So I went home and listened to it, and my mind was blown.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I don't, how do you do this on a trombone? I was just completely blown away by the sound and what he was able to achieve. And I remember going back, it's like, is he playing a valve trombone, or is this like like, how is he doing this? But hearing that JJ, I heard that sound. It was like, I got to figure out what this is.
Hmm.
So I started listening and started copying, like trying to get some of that stuff on my horn. And I would just have some of those albums, like the Village Village Blues, I think, was one of them. But the album that he gave me was a compilation. It was so it was called J.J. Johnson Trombone Master, which is like a compilation of several of his albums. And that Mysterioso solo on there is just insane.
Can you play it now? Not right now, but can you play it?
Well, there was a time where I could get, in the hemisphere. So like, from doing it every day, just listening to that day in,
Right.
day out for months, I was, I can get you in the general zip code.
hmm
But nowadays, it's a little.
I can fake it. So years go by, and now you're part of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. How did that meeting take place, and how did you get involved with them?
One of the people who kind of got me in the scene, like getting more phone calls for like trombone playing,
hmm
was one of the former CJO members, Pat Halloran.
hmm
Yeah, he's living out in, I think he moved to Japan somewhere. I remember being in college after I started kind of getting into the jazz thing. Like me and a couple of my buddies were like, man, we gotta go check out this CJO concert. It was Pat Halloran and Mark Molden, like that were taking these solos, and like we were getting excited. Like we used to call, because Mark would come in with this heat, and like the way that he was playing in the upper register, like he'd be coming with some serious heat. We used to call him Nitro.
Okay.
It's like, oh man, Nitro's about to get up to the solo.
hmm
But seeing Pat, and then I ran into Pat at a jam session because when I was at Baldwin Wallace, like Greg and Greg Bandy, like when I was meeting with him and Kenny Davis, they were telling me, yeah, I'll go to as many jam sessions as you can and just play, like just keep
Right.
playing. And I ended up running into Pat Halloran at a jam session, and he heard me. He was like, "Man, you sound pretty good, man. Do you know how to read music?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could read music," because I had been in pretty much every ensemble, so
hmm
I was pretty decent at reading by that point. And so he started plugging me in, and he first got me on Ernie Krivda's band,
hmm
and I was on that band for like 8 years, which that band was obviously playing every week.
Right.
And for me doing that and just sitting in and going to jam sessions and just checking out concerts, kind of being out in the mix,
hmm
word got around. Like there was just this cat that can play trombone. You can call him up. He's pretty good.
Is that how it works? Everything's got to be word of mouth for what you do?
Yeah, that's a little different. It's a
hmm
little different now. And because I was talking to some of my buddies about that. Like there's, back then we're talking like late 80s, and there were a ton, and it was, and I don't even think there were as many in the 80s as there were in the 60s and 70s, but there were a lot of venues back
Oh,
then.
yeah, really? Yes. Yes.
Even still, like even in the
Right.
80s, there was still a lot of venues. They
hmm
just don't exist now.
Right. Exactly.
So we had these opportunities. Yeah, I was going to college, and I was able to kind of network and collaborate with different
hmm
musicians. Like we're composing, we're trying stuff out in the school setting. But then we could also do the same thing because there were jam sessions everywhere. There's venues, cats letting other people sit in. It was a that's just how the community was rolling back then.
hmm Now you are at Oberlin College right now, correct?
Yeah, I teach the jazz ensemble. I'm the director of the
Um,
jazz ensemble out there.
how did we get to that? But more so, what is this open tone music about? Tell me about that and how we get involved and what do we need to do and what we should look for.
Yeah, so open tone music, I started that in 2010, and it was one of
hmm
those things where I've kind of shared with you a little bit of my music experience and some of the connections I've been able to make. As a result of those connections, it's afforded me opportunity. Like that's what I've been able to win some competitions. I've been able to travel around the U.S. because of music. I've been able to travel overseas a few times because of music. So it's afforded me a lot of different opportunities that I wouldn't have necessarily had otherwise. So when I started it, I was actually teaching both in the inner city and the suburbs at the same time.
hmm
I was doing out of school programming, and I noticed that all of the students that I had in the suburbs, I would talk to them. They all had band every day. It
Mm-hmm.
was a regular thing, kind of like what I had going through Shaker Heights School District. And a lot of them would have lessons. A lot of them had private lessons pretty much every week. And at the same time, the students that I was working with in the inner city, specifically Cleveland, I was working with Cleveland schools at the time. Some of those band programs would be like 2 or 3 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
or some of them would only have bands, like especially the younger grades would meet once a week.
Right.
Or it would be this combination of kids that are interested in music plus kids that are just in a classroom just to get a credit hour so that they can graduate.
Right. Yes.
And and then you start having these cuts, and there's different reasons for that. But I just noticed that discrepancy and wanted to do something about it. So I started up open tone music to try to create a solution for that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And we first started working with Cleveland schools and doing work with their all city arts program, and then it spread into the Boys and Girls Club. Was doing programming with them, as well as the YMCA, Akron Public Schools. So it kind of spread throughout Northeast Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have two of our signature programs is the Amistad Caribbean Arts Program, which really focuses on the music culture, the history coming out of the more recent African diaspora, from specifically from Western Africa into the Americas. And we have that program, and then we also have our Rubber City Jazz and Blues Festival, which takes place in Akron, just celebrating the history and the culture of jazz and blues in that area.
Okay. So as a young student, how do I get involved in open tone music?
So we have a couple of different venues now. So we do the summer camp, which is a 2-week intensive that we do every summer. And you can do all the pre-registration online, opentonemusic.org. And then we also have through school districts, like some of the schools contract us to go in and work with their babies doing after school programming. And we do that both in Cleveland and Akron.
What is your goal for these kids? Once they are done, what should they be able to do?
So we started off as a just kind of getting kids exposed to music.
Mm-hmm.
So we're essentially not necessarily trying to create another professional musician. Everybody's not interested in that, nor should they be. Everybody has their own
Right.
goals. But the same skills that you learn from learning an instrument and learning music are the same skills that can be applied to anything. So we're essentially just using music as a tool to create better humans and teaching these kids about their heritage.
What is your style of teaching? Because everybody, in this day and age of being treated correctly and all that sort of stuff, what is your style in teaching these students? Because that's what they want to know. Okay, I figured I'll come out with this and I can do this. But if are you gonna talk to me? Are you gonna yell and scream?
Right.
Do I have to rehearse 9 days out of the week? What do I have to do? What's your style?
It breaks down pretty simple. So each student, and this philosophy kind of goes throughout everything that we do. So each student is somewhat of a seed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the point is to not try to grow an orange seed into an apple tree. If it's an orange seed, we want that to grow into
Right.
an
Right.
orange tree. So the goal is to just create an environment to be able to draw out the best out of that student. Everybody's going to have something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that also, like when we're teaching the kids how to improvise. It's like, okay, you're going to be listening to music, you can emulate what I do, but ultimately your voice is what's important. Like that's what we want to hear. So treating each individual student as an individual, while at the same time creating an environment for all of them to be able to develop.
How do you promote people or kids to become involved? What is my 18-year-old or 17-year-old or 15-year-old child need to do to get involved into your program?
Currently, we're just going through the school districts,
Mm-hmm.
working with different schools directly. But we do have some people that reach out to us through the website.
Okay.
You can just easily go to opentonemusic.org, connect with us that way, and we can get you plugged in either through one of our after-school programs or through the summer camp.
Interesting. So in the summers is when you're really active, or is it just during the school year?
It's pretty much all year round.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Summer is we have a 2-week intensive in the Cleveland area. This summer we're looking at, I think the Akron program is also 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's actually 2 camps that we get contracted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not open tone music. We just partner with other organizations.
Right. Okay. Chris, I hope we have developed some an opportunity for people who are listening to get their children involved. But I also look forward to seeing you perform during one of the CJO concerts, and I hope that happens relatively soon. It's been a pleasure. We got more to talk about, so maybe we'll have you back on later on, and we'll kind of go from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Jazz in the Land, the original CJO podcast, and there's more after this.
This has been Jazz in the Land, the CJO podcast on behalf of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. Thanks so much to our board and staff and audience and supporters, and especially to the crew that makes this podcast possible, including host Darrell Scott, producers Scott Marsh and George Carr, and associate producer Ricky Exton. Thanks again for your time, and we look forward to sharing jazz with you in the future.